On this week's episode, we're talking about how to get ready to move your office. So if you followed along on my previous episodes, you know that I recently not only just moved offices, but also moved home offices. Now, I don't recommend doing either of those at the same time because it was very stressful, but I feel like what happens so often is that you try to space things out, you try to plan accordingly, and everything just ends up getting jammed into the same 2 weeks, and it's absolute mayhem. So I've created some tips that really helped me throughout this move that I want to share with you. Some things to get started with before you move, when you know that you're actually gonna move, but you haven't started packing anything. The thing that I did that really saved me was I made sure that I had all my favorite things. So my laptop, my mouse, my phone headset, anything that I needed to do business, my favorite pens, my planner. You probably have very same items that you use every single day that you love and really need to make your job easier. Those are things that you want to put in a specific spot. I had a little bucket that I used, kept everything there, so that way I knew that no matter how chaotic things got, I always knew where my basket was. That way I could make sure that everything that I needed to do work, wherever the internet was at, I could just grab my basket and go. Now, the first thing that I started doing with my home office was I packed up all the things that I knew for sure I wasn't going to be using. Here's the most important part. You want to label every single box with where it goes and also number the box. And I wrote myself a list, just a general list of everything that was in every single box. That saved me because there was a couple times where I needed to find some laminating sheets, but for the life of me could not remember where I packed them. So I just ran to my list that was in my planner, grabbed it, looked for what I was looking for, was able to locate the box and grab what I needed. It made it so much easier. Now, I know it can be a little time consuming in the beginning because you're just like, oh my gosh, I gotta get all this stuff in a box. I don't have time to write a list, but just know the sooner that you start packing, you might need those items, and it really does make it so much easier when everything is labeled and categorized. This one might be kind of obvious, but you want to update your address. And as soon as you know that you're moving, so for instance, my office space, I actually moved just down the hallway, but it's a big deal to move addresses, even though the only thing that changed was the suite number. So making sure that all that paperwork was filled out ahead of time, long before I knew I was actually going to move. I actually did it as soon as I knew my new office space was available. That's when I filled out all the address change and got the ball rolling, knowing that it was going to be some time before I could actually move in. And what actually happened was my landlord needed me to move out of my other two offices in the same office building and into this one office much sooner than I thought he would. So it actually worked out perfect that the address change process had started so much earlier, because it really would have put a big kink in the works if I hadn't even started the process. So as soon as you know your new space is available, start getting everything transferred. Because here's a really awesome tip. One that I used was that as soon as things started rolling over to the new office space, anything that was coming to the old office space jogged my memory and reminded me that I needed to change my address on that too. Because let's be honest, you don't realize how much stuff comes to your address until you change it and realize, holy smokes, all this new stuff is coming, all the old stuff is coming too. I got to keep everything in order. So start, the sooner the better. Like getting your address changed, you want to make sure that you get the internet and the mover scheduled as soon as possible. Every location is different, but movers are in high demand right now. Luckily enough, I was able to snag a mover within 2 weeks of when I needed them, but make sure that you get that scheduled as soon as possible, because they might be out a couple months, but you need to move sooner than that. So the sooner you know, the sooner you can make other arrangements. Now, if you know me, you know that I love a good checklist and timeline, and that was exactly what I created. So I shared that with everybody in my office, I shared that with my landlord, I shared it with everybody, so everybody kind of knew what the timeline looked like, what my plan was, and also, like I mentioned about creating the list of everything that I packed up, I also created those checklists of every single thing that I could think of, so that way I had it written down, it wasn't taking up space in my brain, and it wasn't stressing me out because I knew I had it written down. if I did remember something, I already had that checklist started where I could just add extra things to it. So it made it super simple and so much less stressful. Another thing to keep in mind when you are getting ready to pack up and move, this is the perfect time to purge everything. And let me be the first to admit that there is so much junk that accumulates in your office space because you're like, I'll just put that there. I'll get to it later. But pretty soon, that stuff starts to stack up. So you want to make sure that you're purging as you're going through everything. And also, if you have employees, enable them to do the same thing. Have them clean out their desks far in advance of when they'll actually be moving. You could also provide baskets to them as well. So if they have their most used items and they know exactly where they're at, because you would be amazed at the amount of junk that has accumulated in your space. One of my favorite things to do, which is kind of my reward for going through this process, is getting to pick out new decor, new colors, changing up the look of my office. Now, most office spaces will have a pretty neutral backdrop, and that's how my new space is. The wall color is quite a bit darker, but it's still in that beige tan family, so it's still worked out with all of my decor, but I got a couple extra pieces. And I think that that is the fun of moving, to get to add in new things, design your space, get it mapped out ahead of time before you move, so you can tell if you need to get rid of some things or if you can actually buy a few more things. Now, one thing to remember on moving day, actually maybe even a couple days before the movers come, is you want to make sure that everything is empty. So desks, filing cabinets. I have an air conditioner over here that's full of water, so I wanted to make sure that that was empty as well. You want to make sure that everything is empty so it's so much easier for the movers to move, because you've got to remember, they're charging you by the hour. So the more organized that everything is and ready to go and ready to move to that new space is going to be more affordable for you as well. So the more organized you are, the better. A few last minute things that I want you to keep in mind is make sure that you have drinks and snacks available, because whether you are heading out from your old spot to your new spot, you're definitely going to get hungry and thirsty. So make sure that you have drinks, snacks, favorite candy, whatever it is. Make sure that you have something to eat at your new place, so that way you don't have to take a break and run and go get food. One thing that I learned too is have extra extension cords on hand. I didn't realize how many things in my old office we had tons and tons of plugins, but in the new office we don't have so many. So buying those extra extension cords to have on hand will save you so much time, because you'll actually be able to put the pieces of furniture, your printer, whatever it may be, you'll be able to put it exactly where it goes and get it plugged in. My very last tip, which I think is one of the most important, is give yourself more time than you think you need. Whether that's on moving day, prepping for the move, or actually moving in, things will usually take longer than you think. And let me be the first to admit, I'm always like, I got it. I can get it done in 1 week. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. So learn from my mistake and give yourself more time than you think that you'll need, because if you do finish up early, no big deal. You can jump right back into work. But if you do need those extra days, you've got them.